Okay, so does anyone have anything they'd like to share this morning or comment on or ask any questions?
Yes, I wanted to share two things. Um, First is yesterday I injured my neck. So in class, when we were doing the form at the end, I had to sit, and I had a really interesting experience of where normally when I do the form, I feel you moving me, but actually sitting, I felt it way more, actually. It was really interesting. I felt like, like the 3D movies where it's like there's like it's all 3D, and then your like chair rumbles and moves and gives you feedback in relation to what's happening in the movie. It felt like that. It felt like I was on the edge of my seat, and it was really intense. And I felt like my whole body was being moved like a lot, and I was just sitting there. And it was a really powerful experience, and it felt like an experience of movement within stillness and stillness within movement. And so that was really interesting, and made me appreciate being injured, because I wouldn't have experienced that either otherwise. And then I really appreciate you had us in the application part. You had us connect from our dantian up the channels to the eyes and connect to the other person, and then down to their dantian. And that was really helpful. And it felt like connecting through, as you said, it was like a tube. And then it felt like the energy was circulating between us in different ways, like out of my partner's feet to my Yongchuan, and up my central column, like our central columns were connected, and the energy was circulating. And it felt like it was helping me release things, and like release things between us. And then I had an experience where I kind of had the concept, but it felt like everything was light. Like everything, my experience was light. And it felt like the light forms into visions. And then when my mind takes those visions as real and like solidifies them and like concretizes them, that's like what causes me suffering. And like where things get stuck in me is when my mind like takes the light as not light, but a solid thing. And it felt like as that was letting go, as the visions were letting go, they would like return to light. And as they return to light, anything that was stuck would release. And so that was just like the clearest experience I've had in terms of like kind of how that happens. So I really appreciated that exercise and being able to have that experience. So thank you.
Welcome. That's really good. If what's the word for the whole practice of pushing hands and the application, especially the way we've been doing it through Zoom, where you're just moving in relation. If you practice those, and then you practice enough where you're following the form, then actually you have the experience that you just talked about, where you're just sitting, but you can feel the other person moving. And it's like when you start having the experience, it becomes really concrete how the world is really connected. Right? And because like it's happening all the time, you're just bringing sensitivity to it, and you're just strengthening that particular muscle, if you will. But it's a natural occurrence that's actually already happening. You're just bringing more awareness to it, and so it's not anything special. But it just feels special because we're just typically not aware of it. And so that's good. That means that your application and your form practice and like the following practice, the listening practice, is coming along well. So, and then the thing you talked about, the light, you're correct. When we clear out enough, when we have enough release where our system empties of charge, and we connect, like the way you said, from your dantian through the inside, through the eyes, and then through the other person, and then back to their dantian, or the whole body, really. Then you have to experience release. But if there's enough release and there's enough space, you do start feeling the light. And and then you have actually the experience that you have, where you realize that it's the light that accumulates that create, our view or vision or our visual experiences, and that it's actually that experience that which makes us think that we're seeing things. And the more experience you have, that actually you start realizing that even the things that we see, the things that we see as reality, that it's actually the same thing. And you start actually realizing that this sounds a little bit kind of like the Matrix, like, ooh, it kind of, you start actually in a very concrete way, start realizing that everything is an illusion, as the classics talk about. That what you're seeing actually is what you're hallucinating. There's actually an excellent TED talk that actually talks about this phenomenon, where we're actually having a controlled hallucination all the time. And the only difference is that now, and what's the word for it? People actually came to this realization through meditation and becoming more and more aware of their experience. And the only difference is that now, we're figuring this out scientifically, which is kind of really cool, where these experiences are coming together. But so you're starting to have the beginnings of those experiences, which is actually really cool. So like, I want to say congratulations and well done. And then I'm going to say the same thing. Don't seek the experience. not that you would, not that you would, but it's really actually for all the listeners and everyone else who's listening into it. It's like it's the worst thing you can do. It's like each day, it's actually just good to kind of just see what's going to happen that day as you stay in your practice. So
Thank you, Master Kim. That is really helpful. I hadn't connected that experience, the sitting thing, to that's happening all the time. I feel like life makes so much more sense in that context. Like how we're being influenced by other people and the interactions and how it affects us. And also like the experience of, I know like the stars and different energies and stuff can affect us. And I know that, and I see that, but it had never really made sense to me how that would really work. But I feel like in that context, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, it's much more concrete, right?
Yeah.
It's like one of the things I had this actually, this is actually used to be a very common experience, where I started realizing, like, I'd wake up and I feel anxious, and then later on, but I was like, but I've got nothing to be anxious about. Why am I anxious? And I'm thinking something's going on. Later on, I find out that some people I talked to the day before, we formed a connection. I didn't realize the connection was continuing. And, we're actually connected all the time anyways, but, like, if you will, it's kind of like almost kind of like you didn't realize that you didn't hang up the phone.
Yeah, that's
You know,
a great analogy.
yeah. And so, you realize actually, like, I'm having this experience because that person was anxious. Or sometimes it's actually something bigger going on. And then later on, you find out through the news, something actually really big happened and it was just in the air. And so, yeah, we're like being influenced by those factors all the time. And as we just learn how to have these experiences, it just becomes clear as to, you just have more clarity. And I feel like the clarity gives us more peace, how to navigate through these things. It just allows us to be in more harmony instead of feeling like we shouldn't feel this way. And I feel that, it's like having this bigger awareness is helpful, because sometimes like the things that are happening has nothing to do with us. And we're thinking that it does. And we torture ourselves to no end, trying to figure it out. And I feel like if you just stay in awareness, the clarity actually eventually comes. Even if you're not clear in that moment, sometimes through the day, you're like, oh, that's what it is. And then the moment you make the connection, it lets go. And, and it's not like you have to figure it out. The awareness actually figures it out for you. So, and I feel like that's why, just having awareness is so important for just a good quality of life and for a balanced sense of life, if you will.
Thank you, Master Kim. That's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Is the TED Talk? I found one called "Your Brain Hallucinates Your Conscious Reality." Is that the one?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the one. That's the one.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a really good one. I recommend that you watch it. So,
Thank you, Master Kim.
Welcome. Okay, very good. Okay. So, does anyone else have anything they'd like to share or comment on or ask any questions?
I'd like to share something if
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
no one else has anything. Yeah, I really enjoyed the practice. I was feeling really fatigued this morning, and so kind of I noticed some feelings of like basically it was more apparent like things were lifting off, and it was good to. I realized why, if I'm feeling fatigued or things like kind of wonky, I want to be on my own. Like I had the urge to turn the screen off and things like that, and I was like, I had a realization that because I was focusing more on the things lifting off, and something you said a number of times just kind of stuck more today, which is that to not identify with those and just notice that they're lifting off. And so it's kind of one of those subtle experiences that kind of just reinforces that, where so often socially you're feeling these things, it's like, oh no, I can't, this is not socially good to be feeling things like resentment or irritation or things like that. It becomes mixed with the setting, and just felt like that was more of a clear distinction. So I really appreciated that. And then the thing you taught, the pastor was talking about, the Dantian connection to the eyes. I felt it, and it felt like those forces, those kind of subtle forces between people, it felt really pleasurable. And it was like kind of apparent when it was connecting, when there was that push-pull feeling, and when there was like a slight break in it, and
Yeah.
how to identify that. And it was like it either connects or it's kind of, I guess, like the silk reeling feel, but between people. So that was really cool, and I could feel like through that my sensation of my own Danshan was getting stronger, and just my connection, and felt really felt really pleasurable. So those are the things I wanted to share. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. That's very powerful. It's the experience, of that you and Pastor actually had, that experience actually, I believe is nowadays what people call attunement. And if I look at, yes, if I look at all because that's how we sync up, and that's actually how we establish a good relationship. So these exercises are there, not for fighting or things like that, but if you can have this experience in a altercating situation, then you can experience oneness. So these are all for oneness. And so kind of like interesting, the experience is there so you can have peace and oneness. And so when I started like studying and reading up on, attachment, attunement, and then in, NLP circles, what they call rapport, which is really the same thing as attunement, at least from what I can see. Maybe they'll make some more distinctions, but it's kind of, and if you look at this, it's actually basically, the experience of what we call listening, or the experience of syncing, and being synced up, and it's just you're just doing it really consciously, and you feel
Yeah,
really
it's so
connected.
concrete.
Yeah, it's so concrete. And so I feel like it makes it so much easier, once you start getting it, to be able to do that, and you have a much better understanding as to what creates it. And if you think about it nowadays, oftentimes attunement is taught within, along with like, the concept of being present, and and which is, like the same thing. It's, they're realizing that you need to be able to be present to be attuned. And if you think about it, attunement has to do with moving together the most fundamental way. So if you look at people who are attuned, they laugh together, they're synced up. And if you look at all the descriptions, it's when two people are synced up, their nervous system, and they're sharing experiences. And it's basically one of the most pleasurable and most important experiences for human beings. And if you look at, let's say, for instance, in Tibetan Buddhism, or in certain practices of Taoism and things like that, where they talk about, Guru Yoga, or Indian practices where they talk about Guru Yoga or devotion practice, or, or any practice where you become one with your teacher, or you show devotion. And devotion has to do also with attunement. It's basically learning how to create an attachment that feels secure to you. And so, it's kind of like really interesting to see this, because, feeling securely attached, if you look at the descriptions as to the experience of what it feels like when you're feeling securely attached, they sync up with the traditional spiritual descriptions of what it happens when you experience oneness. Like, say, for instance, there's this really great book. It's called The Power of Attachment. And there talks about that people who are secure, they experience that just in general, that things are going to be okay and that life is good. And when you experience oneness, you experience that general wellness, that general goodness of life, and you feel connected to, life. And if you look at all the different studies of attunement, you see that fundamentally two people are moving together. And so these practices, they're just learning how to consciously study that. And as you consciously study it, your ability to do so deepens, of course. And you become more conscious of it. And so your life actually just naturally becomes good, because it's one of the most important needs. As a matter of fact, actually, I could argue it's probably the most important need, because if you look at all the studies on happiness, they come down to one or two things. If you look at the studies, they found that the people who are happy, they're present, and they're happy when they're present. And it's like there was a study where they would basically call people, and I think now it's actually become text, and they would basically ask them, like, what their state of happiness is and what they were doing, or what was going on for them. And they found out that when people were present, whatever it is that they were doing, when they were present, they were feeling happy. And so they realized that when you're present. But in Taoism, what they say is actually a little bit different. What they say is that when you're happy and you're balanced, you're naturally present. And if you're not present, it's a sign that you're disconnected to whatever's going on because there's a certain kind of imbalance. And so presence is actually seen as kind of a sign. And I think that's more accurate from a natural perspective, even though you can actually also consciously bring presence to bring balance, because what goes one way goes the other. But if we think about it, when we're doing something that we enjoy, we're naturally present. When we're talking to someone, that we enjoy talking to, the conversation flows and you're just naturally present. You enjoy every moment. You're naturally connected and you're naturally attuned to each other. You finish each other's sentences, you laugh at the same time, and and so on and so forth. Now, it's like, and so these things, by becoming aware of it, you're just enhancing those natural things. So that's one. So you're being present. The other thing that they found, there's a study that was done, famous study, really famous. This is being probably one of the most often quoted things on happiness, which is belonging. But if you look at the description of what belonging really means, it means, you'll notice that it's actually having the experience. It's not just any relationship. It's actually having relationships in your life where you feel securely attached, where you feel genuinely satisfied and happy. And they found that that is the number one reason. So if you look at fundamentally when it comes to health and well-being, the two most important things that is a great predictor of your happiness is basically whether you're present or not, and whether you have, good attachment or, good relationships that you can be attached to. And they're the same thing. If we look at this, if you are present enough where you can feel oneness with the moment, then you have both. And that's one of the reasons why these traditions, they have devotion practices until the experience of devotion becomes so clear that you can actually just access it because you have conscious awareness of what that experience is like. Or through something like pushing hands, where you learn how to feel the connectivity or a combination of them, or by meditating and becoming present until through the presence, you start feeling oneness. And really, they really are the same. The practices may differ, but where they take you, the end goal is actually the same, that you are not so caught up with the imbalances that are occurring, that you can focus on being present with what matters until you feel connected to that. And if you can do that, you can consistently produce really satisfying experiences in your life. And so that's kind of a study, if I were to say, of all the meditative traditions. At least it's kind of my observation on it. Okay. But anyway, so hopefully that brought in some more perspective for you to even be able to relate to these practices, even in a more enjoyable manner. And it's kind of like, it just helps, like, where this is going. It's like really about oneness. But then why is oneness so important? Because it fundamentally affects the most important aspect of our happiness.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was really inspiring. Kind of tied together the two experiences I had this morning as well. Like where the attention goes and how, I guess I had experience like of the reverse, like that the way being present brought happiness, or brought the kind of experience I was looking for. And just like being aware of these things. So thank you so much, and thank you for all the context and about the teachings. And that was really, really rich.
I'm glad. Okay, very good. Well, I am done cleaning. I think this is probably a good enough sharing for this morning. So you all have a great day of feeling attuned and securely attached.
Thank you so much, Master Kim.
Thank
Welcome.
you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Master Kim.
Welcome. Okay, bye.